Mr. Ishaq, Sir Ahmed Al-Jarba just arrived to Moscow yesterday. He met with Sergei Lavrov. Lavrov said that the Syrian National Coalition participation in Geneva to peace talks in Switzerland in January was a choice in favor of a peaceful settlement, while Al-Jarba said the Syrian National Coalition will attend the next round of peace talks scheduled, as we just heard it from Jahshan, on February 10th. First of all, could you assess the situation in Syria and the latest meetings of Al-Jarba with the Russian officials?
First, let me greet your honored guest and
Thank you.
Your dear viewers.
Thank you.
Yes, the situation in Syria on the ground, I don't think we have seen any improvement humanitarian-wise as a result of the talks in Geneva. On the opposite, I think we see clearly how the regime is careless about the humanitarian situation. The regime still focused on one thing, is to hang on to power, to his power, and to try to overcome the opposition militarily. I think we can see clearly that the regime is neither serious about a peaceful political solution from the way he has conducted his military campaign in the last few days, and even during the talks in Geneva. So I think as far as the Syrian coalition, it has succeeded to show that it is for a political solution, for a peaceful solution, but that the regime is not serious regarding the situation. Now the coalition needs to continue to build on that, and I think it was a very good move by the president of the coalition, Mr. Al-Jarba, to reach out more to the Russians and dialogue more with them, because we need to have the Russian understand better the Syrian opposition and our willingness to work with all parties to find a peaceful political solution and to really corner the regime that it is the party that resists a peaceful political solution.
Okay, Mr. Al-Ghamdi. Now let's go back to the two superpowers, excuse me, the US and Russia, which disagreed about Bashar al-Assad's role in the transitional period. Kerry said that there should be no role for Bashar al-Assad in the transitional government, while Russia suspects or wants a bigger role or a role for President Bashar al-Assad in the transitional period. This disagreement of both superpowers, where could it lead us if they don't, if neither party or neither state does agree with the other? If America says Bashar no role and Russia says Bashar has to have a role in the coming. As a political observer, how do you read this disagreement between both superpowers over Bashar al-Assad's role?
First of all, it is an excellent question.
Thank you.
And I will respond to it. But just to add to what your two panelists have said,
yes.
There are reports of some sort of behind-the-scenes parallel negotiations that involve parties like America and probably even Iran, and probably even oppositions from within Syria itself, so as to score a deal that may even bear more fruits than the overt Geneva II negotiations where round one finished and unanimously described, I think, as a failure.
Explain more. Let me understand what you're saying. Is there a direct talks
there are
negotiations?
Covert and hidden, behind the scenes, parallel negotiations going on in the city of Bern, not where the overt negotiations are taking place. This may be an interesting development. That
direct negotiations between who and who?
Involving America and involving Iran and involving opposition representatives from Syria itself, not from the coalition, and involving, of course, the coalition. And
What about the regime?
and
Of course.
probably the regime is involved, and I think it is involved.
Why is
and
that? Why is that in your point of view? Why the negotiations are...
It's not my point of view, it is the reports, it's the analysis point of view. They are saying that maybe a deal could be in the making that could save the...
But Walid al-Ma'allim has said that we will not have direct negotiations with the United States unless John Kerry because
apologizes. That is besides the point.
Okay,
what goes on the ground
just want,
is what counts, and it could be an interesting development to watch for, like analysts are watching for it. And the other small development is that Russia is asking Al-Jarba to actually expand the representatives within the coalition in order for the coalition to represent a broader spectrum of the opposition, which Al-Jarba has agreed to. Back to your excellent question, Hussein. The difference now, the qualitative difference between the United States position and the position of Russia, all of this must be seen on the ground. Russia does not stop funding and arming the regime. And the regime is continuing its genocide and military campaign against anything that moves or against anything that opposes him. America, on the other hand, has refused to give lethal or qualitative arms to the opposition. America also has failed to constructively and forcefully facilitate humanitarian aid and the delivery of that aid on the ground. In other words, America is failing and Russia is succeeding, while both hosts, they are hosting the Geneva,
yes.
They are trying to make ends meet, and it is all ending up in total failure, like the unanimous description of Geneva Round 1, Geneva 2, Round 1, apart from the two parties to the conference meeting face to face. There is actually nothing tangible that has come out of it, and I don't know what will happen on February 10 and afterwards. I don't know. Al-Jarba has forcefully stated that the coalition will attend. The regime's representatives have not said that. I bet that they will attend, but with zero achievement of Round 1 and stubborn attitude on the part of the regime's representatives, I don't know what they are going to achieve. And I think the responsibility now, frankly, has always lied on the shoulders of the two superpowers, moving things. And I think they ought to actually negotiate among themselves, the United States and Russia, in order to somehow, for each party, somehow, facilitate and speed up some sort of material success to any of these rounds. And what matters is to me and to you and to everybody and to the Syrian people, what matters is the humanitarian reality on the ground. Now, barbarous and almost hooligan-like use of gunpowder barrels on the neighborhoods of Syrian cities, indiscriminately killing civilians is something that is bewildering.
Yeah, the number has reached.
Is just unacceptable.
Has exceeded 136,000.
I don't know what the regime wants to achieve with these gunpowder barrels, dumping them on top of neighborhoods.
Well,
these are the realities on the ground, and there must be some swift tackling of these tragedies.
Let me go to Washington, D.C. with Professor Jahshan. Professor Jahshan, if you want to add anything to the differences between Russia and the United States. And also, sir, in the Security Forum in Germany, Ahmed Dawood Oglo, the foreign minister of Turkey, criticized the international community along with the United Nations, and he reminded us of the years that he reminded us of the Rwanda story over the Hutu killing the Tutsis or vice versa, and also he reminded us of Bosnia-Herzegovina. So do you think Ahmed Dawood Oglu is referring to a long-term conflict in Syria and that the international community is not willing to stop the massacres in Syria?
I agree on both counts with the Turkish Foreign Minister, Dawood Oglu. With regards to the length of the conflict, unfortunately, I think this conflict is not going to be resolved soon. It's going to drag on for many, many months, if not even years, before a political solution is found. Two, I would also agree with him with regards to the criticism vis-a-vis the international community. I think the international community's position has been shameful. It is not unique to Syria, I understand that. But the nature of the humanitarian deterioration in Syria should have moved the conscience of the world community much quicker to respond to the needs that we witness daily on the news. And it proves again and again that the conscience of the international community is quite often numbed by the daily fighting. When politicians begin to focus solely on the political aspect of a crisis to try to resolve it, they tend to always ignore the humanitarian aspect of the crisis and the price, the heavy price that the public is paying in the interim while negotiations are puttering along and not being successful. Let me go back and expand a little bit on what my friend Mohammed mentioned earlier.
Please.
With regard to the second part of your question, the differences between Moscow and Washington. These differences are serious, and frankly, both parties as hosts to Geneva II made a big mistake by not attempting to iron out some of these differences before they convened all the parties in Geneva. Had they done that and eliminated some of these difficulties, particularly to the crucial issue of the role of the Assad presidency and what they mean by the regime and trying to reach an accommodation in terms of not equating the two. And at one point, Russia was inching in that direction, but then kind of, there were no progress achieved between the two parties in terms of improving or bridging the gap between those two positions. So now we have to go back again and try to iron out. So whether that could happen in the form of what Mohammed referred to as a third track or a secret negotiations, that could be the answer, in the sense that there are parties that have refused to participate in Geneva II because the talks are public. They might be more prone to participate in a Geneva III if the talks are more secretive and quiet behind the scene. Number two, the parties themselves, the key parties, the opposition on the one hand and the regime on the other, have hardened their position because they are talking to the media. And we know from previous negotiations worldwide that results are better achieved when the media is kept out of the negotiating room, in the sense that the two sides feel isolated enough to be honest with themselves and to be honest with each other and try to accommodate and understand the position of each other. While when the media is there, they try to kind of outmatch or outdo the radicalism of the other side. So having a third track, if you will, having a quiet behind the scene talks, if that's the case indeed, in Bern, might improve, I think, the chances for reaching an accommodation. But whether these talks are underway or not, there still needs to be a better understanding between Moscow and Washington regarding these basic issues before the parties themselves can reach an accommodation.
Okay. Before we go to a break or a short pause, let me go to Istanbul because we are ready with him. Mr. Ishaq, sir, the first round of Geneva 2 talks failed to secure any meaningful agreement other than to meet again later this month for more talks. How do you read the outcome of Geneva 2 as a member of the General Secretariat of the Syrian National Council? And what are your expectations of the coming talks?
I don't think that there was any high expectation of the first meeting. I think there was no surprise that both sides took strong position and they're testing each other. I think, you know, in the coming meetings and the more meetings that will take place, we will start to see movement. I don't think, you know, the situation will stay as is. And I think the signs we get from
Bassam,
the regime...
could you explain to our viewers a little about what exactly happened in Geneva 2? This is the first time both sides meet in the international community. This is the first time the opposition or the coalition meets with the regime. What were the discussions and what were the mood of discussions?
Of course, I think both sides went to the table with some reluctance, especially the opposition. There was lots of pressure on the coalition from forces, political forces inside Syria and outside Syria not to participate, that this will be a waste of time, that the regime will not make any consensus, and many other reasons why not to participate. So I think there was more symbolic importance what happened in Geneva 2. Not so much the dialogue over the issues, but symbolism that yes, the opposition and the coalition is ready to work with the international community and to seek a political resolution into the Syrian question and Syrian crisis. So I think what happened there, it was more you know, a show for the media rather than a substantial dialogue. Both sides, you know, took hard positions. We at the coalition insisted that the focus should be on a transitional body with full powers, while the regime wanted to make the point through the foreign ministers, Mr. Walid Muallim, that it will only accept an expanded government with the opposition, and they used the opportunity again to go to the media and try to portray us as you know, as not peace seekers and not seekers of political solutions, and to discredit the opposition. Of course, this cannot be easily believed by the media or by the world opinion.
Okay.
So in brief, it was more a media event in the first round.
Okay. It was a propaganda.